Thanks so much for visiting Tea and Butty on YouTube. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello and welcome back to Tea and a Buddy podcast with me, Dominic.
And me, Erica.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about travelling around the UK and whether it's possible or not.
Whether it's possible? No, it's not possible.
It's not possible to travel around the UK, you see.
Find where you want to go and just stay there.
Because... Yeah. People never get out of London because it's not possible to travel outside of the London into the surrounding area.
I was just gonna say there's actually a lot of kind of different ways you can travel.
There's a lot of different ways you can travel around the UK. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, well, I have to rent a car when I'm there. You know, if you go in there for like a week, it's not advisable to...
Let's talk about the different ways.
Well, let's talk about the different ways first, yeah. Well, there's the most popular way is train. Bus. Buses are like inner city buses, and then there's like intercity buses, which they call coaches. There's, you can go on planes.
Cars.
And cars.
And then one we've just thought of, canals. You can't travel all around.
You can't travel all around the UK. It's mostly within England and within Wales.
I think it's travel quite a bit of England, though. You
can travel quite a bit of England, especially between London and Birmingham and the Midlands, you know, all that places, you know. Yeah. And up to Liverpool and Leeds, even.
So you started talking about cars, so let's start with cars.
Yeah. Cars, well, it's not advisable. The petrol is so expensive, it's just not advisable to drive a car in Britain if you can avoid it, you know, really.
I mean, if you're moving there...
If you're moving there, then yes.
And you're going to have your own car.
Yes.
Then maybe...
Then get your own car.
Then maybe you want to use your car.
Maybe you want to use your car. If you're moving there, of course. But if you're only visiting... There's not really much point in hiring a car unless you're going to be there for a couple of months and you really want to check out every little tiny town in the UK or whatever, or just feel like doing it at your leisure and not relying on where a train stops or where, you know, or where a bus stops,
schedules,
you know. Yeah, schedules and stuff. And, I mean, for that, it's really good, but petrol is expensive. Gas is expensive in the UK. It's like £1.40 per litre or something.
Also renting the car.
And renting the car is a headache. It's a headache beyond belief because, you know...
And you have to get insurance.
You have to get insurance and you've got to be over 25 and... Yeah, it's more of a hassle than anything, really, I think.
But so if you are going to travel by car, there's like... A roads.
Well, there's A roads and then there's the motorways.
Now explain what A roads are.
Well, A roads are the original motorways in Britain before motorways came in. I think motorways started coming in like the 50s and the 60s. You know, they started being built. There's like the M1, the M2, the M4.
And they're kind of more
the
like
M62
highways we have over here. They're pretty direct. Like you're not going to be like turning off of them or
no, they're pretty direct.
Yeah, I mean, or anything really.
A1 is Britain's longest road, I think, the A1.
Yeah.
Which is like the oldest road as well, I think. I think it's actually the oldest road as well. I think it was like originally built by the Romans, you know.
Okay,
who invaded Britain.
So if you choose to drive, you're going to be driving on Roman roads. So there you go. You might want to drive just for that reason alone.
Unless you go onto an M road, which is a motorway, which is built in the 50s and 60s by people. No, who weren't Romans.
But the A roads can be really super windy and like little back
roads,
right?
Yeah, I mean, in those days, like, you know, say like you were doing a trip from the northwest of England, say Liverpool to London, which is in the southeast, it would have taken you about, I'd say about 8 hours, maybe 10 on it. Because, you know, back in the 50s and the 60s, you know, before I think it might be the M1. I'm not sure if the M1 goes to the north, and then I think there's like the M62 or something, which it links to go to Liverpool. But, you know, there's far more like bypasses, what they used to call. It's like, Nobody ever comes through, if you go to like a small town in Britain,
Yeah.
they always go, nobody ever comes through anymore since they built that bypass in the 80s, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, Aylesbury or wherever, is going to get bypassed and because, people want a quicker direct route to where they're going,
Right, yeah.
And I mean, driving around Britain, it's not going to take you that long to get anywhere if you're used to driving in somewhere like Texas, you know?
But I think I think a lot of people think, oh, let's take a car and we'll be able to see more scenery.
I mean, yeah, you can. I mean, it offers you a lot more freedom in that respect because you can drive pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, except for the fact that and I think I've mentioned this in a podcast before, we took a bus somewhere, I don't know, in Wales. And I was really disappointed because a lot of the roads are small, they're narrow, and then like there's no real shoulder on a lot of the roads. Like in America, we have quite big shoulders. Like if your car breaks down or whatever, you need to pull over if someone's sick or whatever. You have space to do that and cars can still go through. There's not really shoulders in a lot of the smaller roads in Britain that I've been on anyway.
No, those are the country roads, you mean? You're
Country
talking
roads.
About from...
So country roads are not A roads?
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's the A663 or whatever, and I can't remember which road you're talking about now.
It's all very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, there's like... they're very much like farm-to-market roads, you'd call over here,
Right, yeah.
And yeah, they're windy because, well... that's a very rural area, like farmland.
Yeah.
So it was dug out through fields and, they put up the hedges and stuff to stop the cows and the sheep getting out, in the way of the cars and everything.
Right, so that's what I was
So you're not going to see anything.
That's what I was going to say.
Unless you're on a high double-decker bus or something,
Yeah. That's what I was going to say is you don't actually get to see a lot of countryside because there's these really tall hedges or... like some kind of fencing, or sometimes they just plant tree after tree after tree after tree, like, which we do that over here. I think they do it to like break the wind or something. Wind
breaking,
for crops and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of disappointing. But I don't think that's true all over Britain. I mean,
yeah, I mean, if you go on a train.
Yeah, so let's go to trains.
Going to trains, yeah.
Yeah.
If you go on a train, you're far more likely to see more scenery.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hurtling along at like 80 miles an hour or whatever it is,
Yeah, but you can still see.
But you can still see things. I mean, I remember your classic one of seeing all the sheep in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go, and then it'll be another field of sheep, and then another field of yellow flowers. And
all the daffodils.
And then,
Yeah.
all the daffodils in Wales.
In Wales, yeah. Just like daffodils growing in the wild. It's so cute. It's so pretty.
Because, I mean, the main train route, say, like, from where we were in South Wales, which was pretty much, it wasn't really Southwest Wales, even. South Wales to London, you're cutting straight across. You go across the River Severn, which is a bridge.
Yeah.
And then you're just going through kind of country. You're going through Oxfordshire. You're going through, the home counties, really, before you get into London.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see a lot of farmland. You're going to see a lot of sheep. You're going to see a lot of cows,
Yeah.
So,
it's
very pretty. For people who don't like that sort of thing, it's uninteresting. For people who are expecting to go through these, like, wonderful, like, kind of Harry Potter-esque kind of things,
Villages,
like they're going to see, like, like the Hogwarts Express. They think they're going to be on that huge viaduct and...
Yeah.
And
maybe around Scotland.
In Scotland, yes, you will get that, yeah.
From the train.
And I mean, on a steam train, it's a bit of a slower journey.
So we've talked about cars. Cars are great if you want freedom. My personal favorite are the trains, though.
Yeah.
The trains in Britain, you guys, are very clean. They're pretty updated. They're not like really fancy. Like you're not on the Orient Express.
No,
there's not
no.
Tables with white tablecloths.
It's not like, and you're not on the Hogwarts Express either. It's just like, you're not going to have like that day is done.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, since the 1980s, I think.
They can cram more people on without
I think
having
when I was a kid, there used to be still carriages with compartments.
Mm-hmm.
And, I do remember some of them, and they weren't steam trains, but they were being pulled, but they got like decommissioned or whatever, and in favor of the airline style of things with like a table here and there, you know.
Yeah, and just an aisle and
just an aisle and
seats
seats on either side and big windows.
But there's plenty of legroom. It's not like an airplane. There's plenty of legroom. There's plenty of space in your seats. The aisles are quite wide. When you get on the carriage, there's a place, if you have luggage, you put your luggage in that area and then go sit down.
You can put them between the seats as well. There's like a little bit of an area between the seats that are like facing opposite directions. You can just slide them in. But yeah, as you get on, there's a luggage rack.
Yeah,
but
there's an overhead thing too, like in an airplane. It's not.
Yeah,
it doesn't close.
It doesn't close, but it's up there.
Because I remember I was a little bit wary of like, oh, we leave our suitcases back here, and then we have to like walk for a mile to find a seat.
It's a luxury. It's a luxury to find. You know, if you're on a train that's crowded, sometimes you're standing in the vestibule, you know, where the door is, and you know you haven't got a seat because there's no seats. You know, everybody's sitting down, and you know,
depends on the time of day you're getting on and the route you're taking. I mean,
you're talking about like when you were going to.
When I would get on and go to London early in the morning, let's say, I didn't have any problem finding a seat because there's not that many people on at that time of morning.
No, there isn't.
But the closer it gets to like rush hour, then it's like it starts getting packed and
it starts getting packed.
People are standing all in the aisle.
Well, it's like
everything.
You fell asleep, didn't you? You used to say, well, and I had the same experience. You know, you kind of fall asleep. It's only like a 4-hour trip on a train to. London.
And that's with stops, of course.
And that's with stops. And, you know, as you start getting closer to London, places like Slough and Reading and, you know, stuff like that, people who commute into London start getting on, and they're all like business.
Yeah. You
people.
Hear all the newspapers rustling and everybody's talking on their cell phones.
Like, yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, I'll be there in like 5 minutes. Yeah. We're just getting into Paddington now.
I like that though.
Because it would wake you up then. You'd be like, oh, okay, we're nearly there then. You know?
Yeah.
Because I fell asleep once and someone kind of like sat in the aisle opposite me and he was talking about, has he done it? Has he done it? Tell me if he's done it. I'm nearly there. I'm nearly there. And he was in a suit and everything, you know, and he had like his upper crust baguette and, you know, his copy of the Financial Times. I think he even had a bowler hat. I'm gonna say that he had a bowler hat and a little brolly, and I was like, God, this is the most British person that's ever got on this train. So his name's Mr. Smithers Jones or something, you know.
I'm sure it would probably be nice to, and I'm sure it would be easy to find a sleeper train if you were traveling, let's say, from Cornwall and you were going to go up into Scotland, because that's going to be a long route.
I've done the sleeper train as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's really cute.
And those are going to have compartments. Obviously, you're not going to be like in a kind of
sleeper
thing
compartment.
With just like a prison with all
beds.
It's not going to be open
you have a
to
little,
each
like,
other.
Area, and if you book 2 cabins together, you can have like a little bit of space and room. Because I used to live in a remote part of Scotland called the Isle of Arran, and you know we'd used to get the sleeper train from Glasgow down to where I was born, Torquay, and it was nice. It was really nice to get on that thing. You know, I would have appreciated it more if I wasn't a kid, I think.
Yeah. Okay, cars, trains. Let's do buses next.
The buses or the coach.
The coach, yeah.
Because
buses are just
long distance.
In Britain,
buses are like
just referred to
town
like
buses, like city buses.
City buses. Okay.
Yeah. So they're kind of usually single decker.
The coach is what you take from one city to another.
A coach is like a bigger type bus. Yeah.
And in Britain you have what? The National Express?
National Express, Megabus, and up in Scotland I think they have Scottish City Link, unless I'm very much mistaken.
Okay. And we have traveled by bus. Traveling by bus is going to be
it's quite a lot cheaper.
Oh my God, it's a lot.
I mean, the
cheaper.
trains are coming up in expense now.
Yeah.
They're kind of starting to take the piss a bit.
They're quite comfortable.
They're comfortable, and lots of people use them. So it's like, they can charge what they want now.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite comfortable. It's like an easy. You don't have to. You know, they've got bathrooms on the train. You've got a lot of space. They're air conditioned. It's just they're pretty nice. So I can understand why the price is coming up. I can also understand why the price of the bus is fairly cheap. Oh yeah, we traveled.
I mean, it's not too bad, really.
It wasn't great.
It's not great. It's not the most comfortable of rides.
And it's perfectly clean. It's nothing to do with that.
It's not like, oh, disgusting and,
No, it was fine. It's just
You're
the
just a bit-
seats were super uncomfortable.
You're cramped a little bit.
You're really crammed. Yeah, you're really
You haven't
crammed
got too
in
much leg
space.
room.
No.
And, you
There
can
is
get
a-
like a sleeper bus. I think you can get a sleeper bus.
And there
from,
is a
like, if you're
toilet on
going-
the bus, but,
Yeah. Yeah, but, you don't want to really use that. I mean, people who do get motion sickness might, because,
on a bus, yeah.
And there's also delays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, quickly going back to the trains, there are delays on trains as well sometimes, you know. Sometimes you'll be on the train and a signal will fail and you'll be stuck outside Bristol for 3 hours.
Are we going to have the story?
We're gonna go back to that. I think I've told this before on here anyway. But I was stuck after coming out of London back to Wales outside of Bristol for like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Just sitting on the track, we all were.
Yeah.
And it was very much like the Titanic, as another passenger cried out.
Oh my God.
Because it would be like, the driver would come on,
Give you
updates of how the train was sinking. And it was just like, this guy was just like being really, he'd had a couple of drinks.
Yeah.
He'd been on the cans of like gin.
Because that's another thing. You can. There's like a snack.
There's a snack.
car,
There's a
isn't
buffet car, they call it.
Yeah.
You can go, but it's pretty overpriced. You can only really get sandwiches. You can maybe get a hot dog or a hamburger or something on some of them.
But you can get drinks on.
You can get drinks, but I think they're starting to limit the amount you can drink.
Oh yeah.
Because they didn't when I was growing up, and I used trains a lot, and there'd be a lot of drunk people on train, and it's not a very nice thing. Because I remember, funnily enough, when we were getting into our sleeper car, some guy was like just in the next cab, and he goes, "Where's the lager? Where's the lager?" He screams like that, and my mother was just like, "Oh God," like, we have to be next to someone like that. Don't we, Where's the lager? But yeah, going back to buses and stuff. I mean,
so there's delays on trains sometimes. You're gonna have the possibility of delays if you're not the one in control. Like if you're not driving a car, then
I mean, but even then, if you're driving, it's going to be like on a bus. You're going to get stuck in traffic sometimes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which we did coming into Wales at one time, and the driver, they're on a set shift. They can only do like 3 or 4 hours on.
Right.
And it's like then they have to pull over and they have to wait for a replacement driver to come and take their place. It's like the law.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened to us, and he had to pull into a service station, and he got out, and there was a lot of irate passengers going, "Why couldn't you just drive on? Why?" And he's just like, "No, I'm legally not allowed."
Oh yeah.
And it's like, my shift is over. Happy. Yeah. Legally not allowed and to drive over this limit. It's the law, over this time limit.
So we had to wait on.
We had to wait on and he took about half an hour to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't want to put people totally off buses because they are super cheap.
They're super cheap, and you can get pretty much anywhere.
They're super,
on a megabus.
super
a megabus,
cheap.
actually, we've looked at them. They've got sleeper buses,
yeah,
which are kind of like the night bus.
The night bus.
Yes, you really want to do them.
I totally.
Yeah. Nearly there.
I totally want to do that.
You just want a little shrunken head driving.
They're like double deckers, so it's just like, it's going to be like the night bus, like. Yeah, let's do that next time. That looks so fun.
It's not going to look like night bus. I mean, they don't. What did they have in the night bus? Hammocks, and it was like
little rest, like kind of like tables and chairs.
Yeah, tables and chairs, and it was an old like London double decker bus painted purple or something.
Yeah, I think.
Which
so.
you don't drive that all the way over Britain. These are just like standard coaches and stuff, double deckers, and some of them are really nice.
America, so there may be sleeper buses here.
I'm sure there are.
I've never ridden megabus.
What's the one over here? Greyhound. That's a big.
That's the biggest, oldest bus. Yeah.
And people have ridden that and not been too impressed.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you are on a budget, I would definitely say that. But coach is the way to travel Britain because it is not the most comfortable, but it works, and it's super cheap. So you're not gonna break the bank with that. Flying, however, is
a different story.
it's a different story. Yeah.
People who fly, I mean, you can fly to maybe Edinburgh from London.
Cardiff.
Or Cardiff. To Edinburgh, but anywhere else is really like, what's the point you doing that?
Yeah, because we looked it up, didn't we? Like, we just looked it up. Like, does anybody fly like Cardiff to London? Because it's only about 4 hours on the train,
you
or
drive. Really, it's driving or train.
And they do have flights, but they're like, what was it, like
they go via
$100, $200, $300, and they have layovers in like Amsterdam or Paris or something like that.
So you have to fly out of the country to fly back into it, which it's not really viable. It's not a very viable solution, really.
Surely nobody does that. I mean, why would anybody do that? Somebody who has
people who had no idea that people who think it's going to be quicker to get here from there.
Yeah,
I don't want to sit 4 hours on a train. I don't want to sit 4 hours in a car.
I mean, you might fly from like Cardiff to Liverpool, let's say, but even then, I don't think
even
so.
Then, no. I mean,
it's about the same distance.
It's about 5 hours on a train. I think.
Yeah. So, there are flights if you just love to fly, and you're
obsessed with flying and you cannot not be on a plane.
Right. I mean, in theory, flying anywhere in Britain should only take you like 20 minutes. But you're going to have to make stops in somewhere ridiculous. Like a lot of the flights, I think, had a stop in Belfast, depending on where you were flying.
You can fly from Belfast. Belfast is in the United Kingdom.
Right.
That's in Northern Ireland.
You could probably fly Belfast to Edinburgh or Belfast to Glasgow or something like that.
Yeah. You can go to Belfast, and then Belfast to Liverpool is what it is. I think it was Cardiff to Belfast. And they're super cheap.
It was
flights.
it was like London to Liverpool had a layover in Belfast.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's just like, what, you're going to fly up to Ireland and then come back down? I don't know. But, so you can...
Well, Belfast is... Northern Ireland and Liverpool, they're pretty much on the same... distance from each other. They're on the same plane, as you should say.
Let's put it this way. You can fly cheaper and probably for the same amount of time from Britain to anywhere in Europe as you could fly around Britain.
Yeah.
So there's just no
Yeah,
reason.
you could, yeah.
There's just no real reason. I mean,
there's no real reason to it. So just get the train or
because all the layovers that we saw were like
bus.
An hour, a couple of hours.
Yeah.
There were some like I think the Cardiff to Edinburgh was like nonstop. Yeah. But that was about
Usually people will fly to Edinburgh because they don't want to get a train.
Oh, yeah. All the way up there.
All the way up there. Because, I mean, to a lot of people who live in London, the north is a long way away. It's very far away.
Right.
It's Game of Thrones style away.
Yes.
It really is. I mean, it's like King's Landing. It's like, the north. It's like this long...
King's Landing to the wall. God.
Yeah, it really is, It's very like that, it's a long way away. People driving, it's going to take at least 2 days to get up there, it's... Even though it'll take 4 hours nonstop,
Yeah. So, okay, we've done cars, we've done trains, buses, planes. Let's do, like, ferries.
The ferries,
Ferries. We were talking about this before we started recording, if you can't tell. And Dominic was making fun of me because I say ferry like fairy.
like a fairy. The fairies are coming.
So we were saying, okay, say Furry.
Furry.
Furry. Ferry.
Fairy.
Fairy. Fairy.
Fairy.
Fairy. There's no difference between.
I mean, really, no, there isn't fairy liquid,
Fairy and fairy.
Like the ferries usually are very, and there's a lot in Scotland. I've only really got experience with the one from Dover to Calais, which is in France, and Ardrossan to Brodick, which is in the Isle of Arran in Scotland. So, and there's a lot of ferries up in out to Shetland and all that kind of stuff.
Right, I was going to say, if you're doing a tour,
Stornoway and
right, if you're
out to Hebrides,
if you're doing a tour of the UK or particularly Scotland, and you want to go to hit all those, because there's a bunch of little islands up there.
There's a lot. Yeah.
Then you're gonna need
to get on a ferry.
A ferry, yeah.
Yeah, usually it'll be a Caledonia McBrain ferry. I think they're still going.
And I have no idea what the schedules are like because I've never been to Scotland, but
and some of the crossings are pleasant. Some of them, if it's been a rough sea, then it might be a bit bumpy.
Now, do they have ferries from Scotland to Ireland? Do you know?
I'm not too sure about it, but I'd imagine so. But I think it's more from Liverpool to Northern Ireland. I know they have ferries from Wales to Ireland.
Yeah.
Usually on Fishguard or Pembroke Dock, maybe.
It takes.
I might be totally.
It takes quite a while, though, doesn't it? So it's like
takes about maybe an hour.
Oh no, I think we looked it up, and it was a lot more than that. So I think that if you're gonna ride the ferry
from Wales to Ireland,
yeah, you're doing it for the experience.
Cork to Fishguard. I think it's Fishguard to Cork, because you can't really get a ferry to Dublin. I don't think. I think it's just a Fishguard to Cork.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that somebody might be able to think, but usually people fly from Dublin into Britain now.
Yeah.
Because the flights are cheap. I think the flights are much cheaper than a ferry.
Yeah. And I mean, it would be faster, and
yes, it would be faster. Yeah,
I think So,
but it's if you want an experience,
right? Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. It's an option.
If you want to cross the Irish Sea, So
what about the Isle of Man? Is up there, right?
The Isle of Man is up near. Yeah, it's
So there's probably ferries from
the Isle of Man
between. Yeah.
Yeah. I think people fly into the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man actually is its own. I mean, it's under British. It's under the Commonwealth rule. It's under the sovereignty of the Crown.
It's not
but
technically
it's not technically part of the UK. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's got its own little country.
That's a whole separate podcast unto itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last option is my favorite option because I just think it would be so fun. And we've only recently kind of thought about it, but you can really get around a lot of England on the canals. So tell a little bit of history of the canals really quick.
Well, the canals, for people who don't know, they were dug out. They're man-made waterways in Britain that were dug out during the Industrial Revolution, which was late 1800s, early 1900s, as a better way to transport goods and services, and a faster way too.
Faster way, right.
It was a faster way too, because what they'd usually have is they dig out these narrow channels of water, and they dig it from London all the way up to Birmingham, which was a very industrial town.
Yeah, so if you watch Peaky Blinders, you've seen the canals.
If you watch Peaky Blinders, you've seen the canals. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
And they still used them in the 1920s and 30s, and I think they kind of fell out of fashion in the 40s and 50s because lorries came in, trucks.
Yeah.
So and motorways were built and everything. So it was just they kind of fell out of they weren't a vital part of Britain's industrial, the backbone of Britain's industrial economy. But now they're still there. It's not like they closed everything. Maybe they closed a few. I'm not too sure about it, but they're still there. But they're used for pleasure now.
Yeah.
Mostly.
So people have little canal boats.
People have canal boats that they live in, and they just go up and down the canals, and they moor at the sides, and they go to the shops and come back again. And
because you said there's some pubs and stuff that are just kind of set on the canal.
They sit on the canal, and some houses too. And we were just watching someone who was going past. He goes, "That's the dream: having a house with the canal at the bottom of your garden where you can have free mooring for the rest of your life."
There was a little white picket fence that backed it, and then they had their little boat right outside the back gate, and there were dogs playing in the backyard. I was that would be so nice. You go out into your backyard, and that's what you see is that canal. That's so nice.
The canal, yeah, and they're just the canal boats are these long kind of boats. They're not really. You can't go to open sea on them,
right?
They're little. They're little. Yeah, they're narrow and they're little, and they've got little diesel motor engines or whatever. And they only go about 4 or 5 or 6 miles an hour at most. I'm not sure. They might go 10. There might be faster ones. I'm not sure. But back in the olden days when it was just Industrial Revolution, where steam had just come in, they were using horses to pull them along.
Oh yeah. But they're really cute.
Yeah.
And you could take one probably from Liverpool to London. I would imagine
there's enough connecting canals. I think Grand Union, they call them things like Grand Union. Then there's the Trenton Mersey. And then there's the Liverpool to Leeds Canal.
So if you're really like into boating and
if you're into boating, that is the thing to do.
Yeah,
that is the holiday you would love.
That would be an amazing thing because you know what? There's not really super bad weather in Britain most of the time, is there?
No,
so it's not like, and it's not like the water's going to be really rough and you're going to like get seasick or something like that because it's like you said, it's like they're like 3 or 4 feet deep. I think.
Yeah, they're like 3, 4, 5 feet deep. At the most, you know.
Yeah.
So you can jump in, but you don't really want to because...
Yeah. And then there's a whole system of locks and everything. We could make a whole separate episode,
I think maybe the next episode we'll talk about canals, and because they're really kind of like a really ingenious invention for getting around a country. You know?
So if you want to know more about the canals, then we'll possibly be talking about that in an upcoming episode.
Yes.
But... that sounds like a really fun way to go around Britain. I think I would like to do that.
Yeah, I definitely a canal boat holiday.
I wonder, surely you can rent them, I guess. We'll look into that. We'll
look into it and we'll tell you in the next thing and we'll talk about it. And, you know, you never know. You might be really into it and you might want to go do it. So, like we do.
Yeah. But I think we pretty much wrapped that up.
We've wrapped it up, everybody.
If you guys have any questions about... getting around Britain that we didn't answer in this podcast, and just go ahead and DM us on any of the social media sites or send us an email.
We're on all the social media. We're on Patreon now as well. If you want,
we do have a Patreon page.
Tea and a Butty.
And we thanked our very first patron last time. Navdeep, we'll give him a shout out again.
Good old Navdeep.
And so we're trying to get it together, guys.
We're trying to get it together, and it's slowly coming together.
Yeah. So do all the things you guys know what to do.
Do all the things you know what to do.
Is there an echo in here?
Yes. Is there?
And we'll talk to you next time.
We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye. That's an echo.